Make your next move with American Express Business Platinum. You'll get 5 times membership rewards points on flights and prepaid hotels booked on AmexTravel.com. Plus, enjoy access to the American Express Global Lounge Collection. And with the welcome offer of 150,000 points, your business can soar to all new heights. Terms apply. Learn more at americanexpress.com/business-platinum. Amex Business Platinum. Built for business by American Express.
This episode is brought to you by Allstate. Some people just know they could save hundreds on car insurance by checking Allstate first. Like you know to check the date of the big game first before you accidentally buy tickets on your 20th wedding anniversary and have to spend the next 20 years of your marriage making up for it. Yeah, checking first is smart. So check Allstate first for a quote that could save you hundreds. You're in good hands with Allstate. Savings vary. Terms apply. Allstate Fire and Casualty Insurance Company and Affiliates. Northbrook, Illinois.
Welcome back once again, everyone, to the Skating Penguin Network. It has been a little while since we touched base, at least in terms of Penguins hockey, and I wish I were speaking under better circumstances, but unfortunately, that is not the case. Once again, this is Robbie, as always, Snail on the other end of the line. And the last time we did a recap, the Penguins were coming off a pretty convincing 5-1 victory over the Los Angeles Kings, their first game in California. Things were looking up. They had won 2 of 3. They had kind of righted the boat or the ship a bit after a rough homestand. Things were looking up, and what was laid ahead was the opportunity to bank some points and really put themselves in the thick of things. What they did instead was lose 3 straight games, being outscored 11-3 in those contests. The teams they lost to, Anaheim, Seattle, and San Jose, are not good hockey teams. That should be stressed here. These are bad hockey teams they are losing to, and losing in non-competitive fashion for the most part. The Penguins looked bad during this 3-game stretch, completely inexcusable. And instead of going through each individual game here, I know Crosby has 2 goals in these games, so that's a positive. But other than that, there is not much great to talk about. So we're just kind of pulling out. There's no real form to this podcast, no real outline. We are just going to kind of catch up on where we have been, where we are, and where we're going with this team. And I think it's safe to say that the frustration that you hear from us today will be shared by the Penguins fan base as a whole. If you're on social media, you've certainly seen it. But without further ado, I know I'm frustrated, and I certainly know Snail, who is coming to us from Seattle as always, shares in that frustration as well. Snail, I know you were there Saturday, but Saturday was really just just a third of how bad these last 3 games were. Just a glimpse of just inexcusable hockey from a team that it looks like they're almost worse than they were back in the beginning of the season.
Yeah, man, when you said that 5-1 win over LA, that feels like a month ago. Like, it feels like that was so long ago. Geez, where to even begin? Yeah, this team has kind of gone back to that not seeming to respond much to any sort of adversity. They kind of look like they're just showing up and kind of going shift by shift. I have started to wonder if it's if Sullivan's voice, this whole rumor coming back again, has Sullivan lost the room again? Because there is no response from any players. The game in Seattle, watching it live, watching the players make shift changes, I was embarrassed at times. I was like, dude, these guys, there was one line that showed up, and everyone else just seems kind of lost in the shuffle. There's no identity to this team whatsoever. Mm-hmm. Sullivan's system historically has always been emphasizing, forechecking, puck battles. He lets his star players kind of have that freewheeling ability, let them make plays, but always really emphasizes the tenacity and forecheck. This team has none of that. The Stars, Sid got 2 goals over the span of the last few games, but I mean, and Malkin got hurt. We'll probably touch on that a little later. Nasty looking knee injury that has him week to week. But I mean, dude, this team is it's lifeless again. Um, I struggle with Carlson. I think that Carlson looks like he's checked out pretty good, I guess you could say. He's not responsive whatsoever. Chris Letang, it's not for a lack of effort. That dude's trying. I've been hard on him at times, but I think he's out there really giving it. I can't say the rest. I can't say that for the rest of this team. Like Matt Grzelcyk is getting so much ice time. When they picked up Matt Grzelcyk, I did not think he was going to be one of like the top minute munchers on this team whatsoever. It's just weird, dude. They send Pickering down. God, there's so many things we could get into that are just really weird kind of mixed signals. What's going on? They're on a road trip. I know that the time zone, you got to wonder if they're tired or if that's been kind of weighing on them over the last few games, that 3-hour difference. But I mean, even if they're tired, the lack of like tenacity and effort shown in these games is like, it makes me think that I don't think Sullivan's getting through to these guys anymore at all. And it's left me pretty dejected. Like this season so far, halfway through the year, a little over halfway through. Actually, I think there's like 30 games left.
There's 30 games left. I looked today. They played 52 games. They have 30 left.
There's 30 games left. I mean, that's insane. Yeah, I don't know what to think or what to do other than, this team is starting to look like a lottery team quick.
Yeah. I mean, they're done. I mean, they're not making the playoffs. I think the best case scenario is not to. I mean, again, you're asking guys to not compete, which isn't going to happen. They're still humans. They're still athletes. They're going to go out and compete every night. The best case scenario, I think, is just continue to struggle and lose. I mean, if we're being honest, the way they're playing right now, a top 5 pick is absolutely possible. I mean, that's not a stretch in any means. They're just it's not going to get easier either. That's what, like, this was, if you have 4 games against teams that are at or below your level, and you've gotten embarrassed in 3 straight games against these teams, and then you come home and you have the Devils, the Rangers, and Philly before the long break. Like, it doesn't get any easier for this team, and they're going to start losing pieces here soon. Guys are going to be going out the door. I think your big ones are obviously, I think Drew O'Connor is probably on his way out the door. Your 1-year guys, Beauvillier, Grzelcyk, Achari has another year yet, but if you can move Achari.
No, gone, out of here. I don't.
Yeah.
We don't need it. I'm sorry. He. It's not for a lack of effort at times, but he doesn't fit with the Sullivan's. Sullivan too. I'm sorry. Continue, Robbie.
Yeah, I get where you're going from. Like, the Penguins, they have 48 points right now. The 3 teams they just lost to, they have more points than all 3 of those teams. And San Jose by a significant margin. San Jose, they're 12 points better than. And
how do you let Mikhail Granlund score on you?
Yeah, and then the game winner, just a dreadful attempt or clearing attempt by Marcus Pettersson, just straight up ends up in the back of the net. Another thing I don't understand is you called up, you waived Tristan Jarry, you called up Joel Blomqvist. Why is he not getting more starts at this point?
Dude,
I don't agree.
Why is Ned the number 1?
I don't agree with this every other game type thing when you're not playing back-to-backs at all. Like, you've had days off. Like, I do not agree with the going back to Ned every other night. I'd rather just run Blomqvist out there and get him some experience. You're not gaining anything by running Nedeljkovic out there unless the goal is to get him as much exposure and you're going to try to trade him. That maybe I could see. But yeah, I do not see the reason that he is playing consistent minutes every other night consistently. It's got to be Blomqvist. It should be Blomqvist. I wish we'd see more of him. It's just nothing is working right now. It seems lethargic. It's going back to what we saw before Thanksgiving, just everything is a mess. Everything is just off sync. Nothing is working. Doesn't seem like any message is getting through. Again, maybe they weren't as bad as we thought. They maybe they aren't as bad as this. They're not as good as what we saw between Thanksgiving and Christmas. But this is not a playoff hockey team. This is a team that needs to be getting ready to sell. And I know Kyle Dubas denied the quote unquote fire sale rumors, but maybe that was more of just a denial in like, okay, I don't want GMs trying to take advantage of me. We're not fire selling, blah 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 blah. But man, something's got to give at some point. I don't know if it's just trades or coaching. I don't see them making a coaching change at this point because I really don't think it makes a difference unless you're just really going for a shock to the system kind of thing.
I think you got to gas Sullivan to make a statement. Like, that's just me personally. I think you got to gas him. Everyone gone. Like, I just don't, dude, you can't bring them back. I'll continue. I have a major point to get to later about how I feel about Sullivan and this whole Dubas tandem. It's weird, but anyways, continue, Robbie. I'm sorry.
I was watching an interview this weekend with the Wilkes-Barre coach Kurt McDonald, and again, it wasn't a long interview, and it was like a post-game interview. It wasn't anything like super enlightening, but the way he talks about the game, I really think that okay, maybe not right. If they fire Sullivan, I don't think they're just, especially with the way Wilkes-Barre is playing, they're just going to call him up and put him behind the bench. I think there's a lot of promise there. I don't know what. Again, there's always talk about, well, if this guy was brought in, is he really the de facto head coach in waiting? McDonald's been kind of climbing through the system here the last few years. He's been an up and comer. If that's the direction they're going, I think I'm fine with that. Again, I'm basing that on a very small sample size of just watching some interviews and stuff. But a very well spoken guy and a guy that was like, I forget who they played, but they started off the game. This is being the Baby Pens, dreadful, and they asked him about it, and he said we sucked, we were bad. Basically, just straight up said, they were no dancing around the question. Just said, yeah, we were terrible. It looked like we played. It looked like we played like three nights in a row. Was just, I mean, wasn't tearing them down. Was just very blunt with it. Wasn't calling anybody out. But then he was like, in the next 40, I thought we were great. We responded to adversity, and just the way he talked, very even keel, not frustrated, not calling guys out, but it seems like there's a message there. And again, most of the guys that are a part of this next generation of Penguins hockey are being coached by him right now. So that's just, that was just a thought that crossed my mind this weekend while kind of going through the thoughts and stuff like that. But I again, don't know if he'll be the next head coach, but I definitely think I can see why Dubas brought him in, and I do wonder what the overall thought process is going forward with a guy like McDonald currently in the minors.
Yeah, man, you got to wonder. They brought him in for a reason because they liked him, and he, the coach in Wilkes-Barre is very much a like in the same shoes as a prospect in the Penguins organization.
Yeah.
Like if they need a coach, they've got a prospect down there who's coaching right now for them, and they're just chugging so good down there. And like I remember Dubas's whole spiel was he wanted to emphasize the farm teams. He wanted to put more assets into them and manage them better so that, because that's what feeds the NHL team. I just don't see them just like ripping that apart too quickly to supplant the NHL squad. But dude, I this whole Sullivan thing, the team is not responding. I just think you got to gas him. I think you got to get rid of him. Think you need to shock, like you said, a shock to the system maybe to kind of wake people up and be like, dude, we're making changes here because things are not working. They haven't been working. It hasn't been sustained success. Sullivan doesn't look like he's coaching for his job by any means, though. And I mean, he's got the cups. He's got the money from coaching. He'll get hired in half a second. The moment that his contract is terminated, if it ever is, he will have teams firing their head coaches to get him in. He doesn't seem like obviously there's not a ton of desperation behind a coach like Mike Sullivan, like in the position he's in right now, but doesn't seem like he's really coaching for his job. I don't know. I think that bringing in, I feel bad for David. I think David Quinn's his name, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kind of feel bad for that guy because he hasn't really ever been set up for success or given a team.
No.
He has never taken over a team that was like, you know, and you got to earn that right. You know, he's never really gotten that opportunity. He was a college coach. I get it, but I feel bad for him. But he's got to go too, man. The power play it's not all him, but this thing with Sullivan's system. So, are you familiar with? I think I've asked you this before. I think his name is Dan Kovacevic.
Mm-hmm.
I've been trying to say this for years, Robbie. Before I ever was on this pod and during this pod, I've always kind of just been like, dude, Sullivan's system just seems to kind of breed chaos. And this team, I swear to God, this team, no, I never see teams work as hard as the Penguins. Like, it feels like the Pens work so hard when they're in possession of the puck, but nothing ever happens from it. Like, they're grinding down low. They're the forecheck that guy was bringing up earlier. Hanging on to pucks down low, all that kind of stuff that you kind of hear all the time about what's important to teams and their systems. The Penguins do all that, but it never really seems to result in like many goals. Every once in a while, they get a game where they pop off and score 5. But other than that, when it doesn't work, dude, you're exhausting these players. And Dan Kovacevic put it so well. I'm not saying I'm a huge fan of that guy. I actually saw he's going back and forth on Twitter with a couple of.
Yeah, that was over the weekend. That was quite a experience.
Interesting stuff going on there too, but I will say that he put it so well in his little DK Sports hockey, like the little highlights about. He does it about the Penguins, the Pirates, Steelers, etc. But he had one about the Penguins, and he was saying that it just seems like there's always a personnel issue. They don't have the players to fit Sullivan's system. And I just think that how many players have we gone through and seen some players? There are some players that leave the Penguins organization and they blossom somewhere else in a different role. But you also have these players that leave the Penguins and they never really pan out to much. They end up overseas or in the minors. It happens both ways. But how many players have they gone out and gotten because they think it'd be a great fit for Sullivan's system and they don't work out, and then they end up stuck with I'm sorry, but Erik Karlsson. Dubas was so horny for Erik Karlsson, and it was awesome. That news was, I mean, let's be honest, we were jumping for joy, but I had my skepticisms. I think all of us in the back of our minds, despite the success that trade was, kind of imagining what that power play could be like, him and Sid connecting for goals, him and Gino connecting for goals. As awesome as that kind of was in the moment, I think we all had our skepticisms in the back. We kind of got a duplicate on our hands. We got Letang already.
Yeah.
Erik Karlsson does not fit Sullivan's quote unquote Sullivan system. Achari seemed like a great choice. He's such a bowling ball of a player out there. It doesn't fit Sullivan's system anymore. He's pretty invisible out there. If guys like Matt Nieto are like the guys that they're talking about every night that play so well, and Matt Nieto got a lot of ice time over these last few games. Matt Nieto does not move the needle. Like, he does not get you goals.
Yeah.
He doesn't really stop goals from happening. I don't understand, what player is Sullivan, what does he need in a player to have success within his system? I think the league has passed him by a little bit. I think he's a great coach, and I think he'll find success again, but his system, whatever it is not working. And I think Dubas is full. This sounds like a drama TV show, but I feel like Dubas is just kind of almost like, it seems that he's kind of just given Sullivan whatever he kind of thinks he wants and needs. And at some point, I have to think that Dubas has to look at his team and look at his roster. I mean, I pulled up the Penguins. The Penguins aren't the greatest team right now, but Sullivan's system, under Sullivan's quote unquote system, with all these players, bringing in the youth, bringing in the scoring help, bringing in the defensive help, there is only two players that actually play pretty consistently that are not a minus, and that's Blake Lizotte and Anthony Beauvillier. There is not a single player on this team that is even close in the plus minus to being plus. Sidney Crosby, minus 19. Ricard Raquel, minus 17. Brian Russ, minus 22. Malkin, minus 19. Erik Karlsson, shockingly, only at minus 16 with that ice time he gets. Michael Bunting, minus 16. Matt Grzelcyk, minus 15. Chris Letang, minus 15. Marcus Pettersson, shocking, minus 3. Drew O'Connor, minus 14. I mean, you go up and down that what you with the ice time that they get and even their record and the plus minus, you can put as much weight on that as you want, Robbie. I know some people do or don't. That's a lot of goals against that you're giving up all the time. And I know you had Jari for a certain amount of the season, but you call up you got Ned who was playing good before the road trip, and you call up Blomqvist, who's supposed to be kind of the next guy. I mean, they're leaking oil everywhere. What is that system really doing for you? What player do you really need that's going to stop the goals from happening like that and put pucks in the back of the net? Because right now it's only Sidney Crosby. So I've got a big issue with the whole Sullivan system thing. And Sullivan, I think there's a bit of heroism going on with Mike Sullivan in Pittsburgh by Pittsburgh fans, maybe even in the front office. You got to look that if that's the dude running the ship, I think you start there with the issues. Sullivan. Great memories. I think he's a tremendous coach. I think he's a great guy. I think he has helped a lot of players in their career, especially some of these young guys. Here's a Mario Lemieux bobblehead autographed by him, and I'll see you on the golf course. End rant.
I agree with all that pretty much. I mean, guys like Brian Rust, Connor Sherry probably have their careers to thank for or have Sullivan to thank for their careers. Obviously, the 2 cups probably don't happen without Sullivan. Matt Murray, all that is credit to Sullivan. And I again, every coach has a shelf life, and it's like he'll get scooped up right away. You might even have a Jim Montgomery situation where somebody fires their head coach immediately to hire Mike Sullivan. And he could very well find success in his next spot. And that's great. That's fantastic. I hope he does. It's done in Pittsburgh. The time has passed. It probably should have passed a couple years ago. I understand you don't want to let another team have a guy that has delivered you. He's the most wins in Penguins history. Is probably going to be there for a long time. But at some point, the message becomes stale, and that's fine, guys. I mean, sometimes it's okay to cut bait, and sometimes it's beneficial to cut bait. Right now, the Penguins have the 3rd worst goal differential in the NHL at -40. They have given up the 2nd most amount of goals in the NHL by a significant margin. They've given up 191 goals in 52 games. The next closest is Philadelphia at 173. The Sharks are worst at 196. So the Penguins are closer to last than they are to 30th in the league. They are just hemorrhaging freaking goals. Now, from a goal scoring perspective, they're a little above middle in the pack. They have 151 goals. They definitely could find ways to score. But it feels like when they score, it comes in bunches. A couple of games in a row, they'll just pile it on. But the problem is, even them games where they score a lot, they're giving up 4 or 5 goals. That's not sustainable. Even Edmonton. I mean, they scored 5 goals against Edmonton and still gave up 3. But then you have games like Anaheim where they give up 5 and they only score 1. Seattle give up 4, they only score 1. Just a lot of games really just get the tires or the wheels blown off of them, and it's not sustainable. And sometimes you just got to cut your losses. And Mike Sullivan right now, I think, is one of those losses you have to cut. And from a fan perspective, credit Sullivan and everything he did for this team. He deserves, when he steps away, I mean, he's going to be on the Hall of Fame. Easy, he's going to be in the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I can't imagine there's many NHL coaches with 2 Stanley Cup rings that aren't in the Hall of Fame. He's going down as the all-time wins leader in one of its premier franchises. He's a Hall of Fame coach. Who knows what he can do? What's really going to be something is to watch what happens at 4 Nations when there's a team built for his kind of style of hockey.
Because just a complete all-star team.
Again, you put anybody in charge of a team of complete all-stars, you have to at least hedge a little bit, because Okay,
Robbie, we could run that bench.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a tack to making it all work, but yeah, I mean, you're throwing out. I mean, the lineup is absurd. You saw the same, like Mike Babcock hasn't won a playoff series since 2009, I believe. And in the meantime, he won 2 gold medals with Team Canada because they were an all-star team. So
exactly.
I mean, it's not all easy, but it'll be interesting to watch just to kind of get okay, this is the Mike Sullivan that I know. Okay, maybe it's not all Sullivan. A lot of it is the team that he was given. But even so, sometimes you just got to cut your losses, and it's time to move on. The Bruins did it with Jim Montgomery. Jim Montgomery, they won a President's Trophy with the best record ever in the NHL about 18 months before he was fired. Paul Maurice is probably going to be fired from the Florida Panthers at some point. Paul Maurice has been fired from multiple jobs before he was able to win a Stanley Cup.
That's a good point.
John Tortorella has been fired from multiple jobs and has a Stanley Cup. All these John Cooper is
Dan Bilesma is in Seattle. He has a cup.
Yes, has a cup. Joel Quenneville was fired by the Chicago Blackhawks. I mean, that was a thing that happened after everything that he had done for the Blackhawks.
John Cooper will be fired as well.
John Cooper will likely be fired by the Tampa Bay Lightning at some point. All these guys have a shelf life. They're not all Scotty Bowman. There's only one Scotty Bowman. Sheldon Keefe had pretty successful teams in Toronto and was fired by the Maple Leafs. I mean, that's
Did Dubas? No. The Tree Living fired him. I was going to say Dubas might have fired him, but he didn't.
No, that was all kind of happened at the same time, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Rob Brendamore is probably going to be fired at some point. And actually, if one lasts forever, it might be Rob Brendamore.
Maybe, and that'll be so annoying because I cannot stand the Carolina Hurricanes. They all take on his Energizer Bunny type persona, and it just exhausts me. Yeah, I wish they were in the West.
Yeah, and I don't know, man. Yeah, at some point you got to cut your losses and just kind of suck it up and deal with it. But the Penguins just don't seem to be a team that wants to do that. I at this point I don't know what holding on to Sullivan does for the future. I don't think it really does anything, because they're going to be, regardless if they fire him now or at the end of the season, they're going to be bad to the end of the season. It's not going to magically get better.
I think that they have probably one more little run in them where all of a sudden it raises some eyebrows and we're like, hey, they're only 4 points out of a spot, and then the trade deadline will come and they'll sell pieces and they'll kind of go back to being bad. But yeah, dude, I agree with you wholeheartedly. It's just every coach has a shelf life. Pittsburgh's been an anomaly. Them and Tampa holding on to their coaches as long as they have. Sullivan is encroaching on Tomlin territory, which is another anomaly in the NFL too. I mean, unless you're Belichick, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
I just think it's time for this roster needs a shake. It needs a fresh set of eyes. I think Dubas. Sometimes I wonder, is Dubas just up in his press box like a mad scientist, with just not a mad scientist, but he's looking. He gets trades done. He's a whiz with getting trades done. He's also a whiz at handing out contracts that end up burning you, and you're stuck with Brian Graves, who might go the whole season without not even a single secondary assist.
Yeah,
did you see that coming?
Yeah, I mean, he's missed 20 games or something like that. But dude, you have to I understand he's a defenseman, but you have to almost try not to even get a point off a deflection or something like that.
You're telling me that one of his deflections hasn't ricocheted around in front of the net and someone banged it home, Bunting bangs it home, and he hasn't gotten he is 0-0-0 stats across the board. All he's got is penalty minutes and ice time.
And plus minus whatever that is.
And you don't want to even know, probably.
Yeah,
he actually might be a little sheltered because he hasn't been playing that much.
Yeah. He might actually, his numbers might actually not be that awful because he is not playing that much. But yeah, dude, that is pretty impressive. to go an entire season without, like, again, when you count secondary assists in hockey, like, just something got to bounce a weird way and it's gonna go in.
Ryan Graves is only a -9.
Okay, he definitely has not been playing, and when he is playing, he's very, very sheltered in that role.
Yeah, who's the normal third pairing guys? Like
Alex Nedeljkovic has more goals and assists than Ryan Graves.
Well, I saw a stat that there's 23 goalies this season with 1 assist.
That's pretty decent amount of goaltenders when there's only
that number kind of shocked me. But you're telling me Ryan Graves signed a 5? I mean, didn't Ryan Graves win a Stanley Cup in Colorado?
No, I think he was out of Colorado by then.
Oh my! Yeah, you're right. They had like Jack Johnson, old stalwart in the back end.
He was out of Colorado by then.
Was he in Jersey?
He was in Jersey. Yeah.
God, I don't know what that. I thought that signing might be good. I liked the size on Graves, and I remember thinking, yeah, younger, good D man. But then, dude, what happened? Like him, Jari, the re-signing of Jari. Carlson, you'll take because better than Granlund and I don't even know. Granlund and Petrie are probably having great years at this point, helping their teams. Well, not the Sharks. Petrie, I didn't really hate Petrie, to be honest, in Pittsburgh. He wasn't the worst. Anyways, I don't know, dude. It's I think a lot of Penguins are scratching their heads right now.
Yeah,
and we got to kind of touch on this too. I sent you that meme. Reddit was blowing up. We were told that there was going to be Penguins players traded at one point over the weekend. I think it was on Saturday night because Mikko Rantanen was dealt from the Colorado Avalanche. Probably a top. Would you say Rantanen's a top 10 player in the NHL?
He's a top 5 winger and probably a top 10
he's
or 12? A top 10 player. Yeah, I think if you really are really looking at a hard list and being honest about it, I think Mikko is probably a top 10 player right now.
Yeah, and he complements Nate McKinnon well. Dude,
completely blindsided the NHL world.
Insane. I didn't even know he was really available, I didn't think that was somebody that was available. I asked you, but on air, would you put your hand up for Mikko Rantanen?
If I don't believe Carolina, it's a very all-in move for the Hurricanes, and maybe he's finally that piece that gets them over that hump. Because again, he's a free agent. He's a Jake Gensel type situation. Mm-hmm. He is a free agent this summer, and you're gonna have to throw a lot of money at him. That is the reason that Colorado moved on from him. They didn't think they could get a deal done, and he was going to be expensive. He is a top 5 winger in the league.
He can put up 50 and he puts on 100 points.
Yeah, he's an absolute machine. It's going to be interesting to see how he adjusts away from Nate McKinnon, but I think he's like a Gensel. A lot of people said Gensel is a product of Crosby. A lot of people may say Rantanen's a product of McKinnon. I just think on his own, he's just an excellent hockey player, and he's going to be fine. He's going to get paid a bag load of money by someone sometime this offseason. Be very interesting to see who ponies up that money, if it's not Carolina, of course. But Carolina is now 2 years in a row gone for a big splash. They moved on from Martin Necas. Taylor Hall's involved in some way in this trade. I think he's in Carolina now.
He is.
For some reason, Chicago retained money on someone and ended up with a 3rd-round pick in some bizarre situation.
Well, yeah. What did they got? So they retained.
I have no idea why they were even apart. They retained and got a worse selection than what. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know.
Feels like they were making a deal in the dark, and everyone turned on the lights to see what they got, and Chicago was like, "Oh, I got a 3rd-round pick." And I got half of Rantanen's salary, but where the hell did Taylor Hall go? Yeah. Taylor Hall's just in a Carolina jersey.
Yeah, Taylor Hall just snuck out the side door and threw on a Carolina jersey. I mean, Kyle Davidson must have just been I don't know if they were just trying to include him to make him feel good or what. But
no idea what's going on.
Yeah, no idea what was going on there. But someone's going to rob Chicago at some point in one of the most lopsided deals you've ever seen at some point, probably this offseason. because that's a team that is going to be desperate to do something. And I'm not sure Kyle Davidson is the guy you want making a desperation move based on what we've seen in the past. But it's going to be very interesting to see what goes on here. As soon as that trade happened, the immediate it was probably Paul Bissonnette immediately was like, "Oh, they're opening up
room for Crosby."
And that started a whole entire.
Hey there, Ryan Reynolds here. It's a new year, and you know what that means. No, not the diet. Resolutions. A way for us all to try and do a little bit better than we did last year. And my resolution, unlike Big Wireless, is to not be a raging and raise the price of wireless on you every chance I get. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited. See mintmobile.com for details.
Storyline, and it took like 24 hours for them to put the fire out on that one again. Again, that's kind of what Ed Helsinki, he was our one question for this episode. Any truth to the Crosby or Malkin trade rumors? Nothing to Crosby. I haven't heard anything, I'd say, specific on Malkin. Again, now we don't know, because the fact that he was able to even walk off the ice on Saturday is a testament to how well built those athletes are, because the way his knee bent and his entire leg bent, mine would have snapped.
I might have died.
Yeah, I may have just straight up died. It wasn't anywhere near any vital organs.
No,
but I literally may have literally just died. They probably would have had to amputate.
Do we know if that was the knee that they had to rebuild?
I think he's had both knees rebuilt.
Oh no.
But I believe he came back for a shift, and realized he couldn't go, and now he's on IR. So yeah, I don't see any kind of talk with Malkin or any smoke there. But all in all, it's more just bluster for media attention from the same guys that say it every year. It would be really funny if Crosby and McKinnon do play with each other someday, but it's actually in Pittsburgh.
That would be funny.
That would be incredibly hilarious.
Awesome.
Like, for Colorado, for some reason, goes on a full fire sale. They are straight tanking, and McKinnon somehow ends up in Pittsburgh for Crosby's last year. They're taking one last run. That would be deeply funny.
That would be really funny, but I don't think.
Funny.
I feel like the Sidney Crosby to Avalanche rumors have always been so prominent because of where the Penguins are at. But yeah, you never know what could happen in the future. I just worry honestly about back to the trade stuff with the trade deadline kind of looming, still decent ways away, but we kind of got this Four Nations face-off about to happen here in a couple of weeks. And a lot of people are saying that there's going to be a mini trade deadline, maybe right before the roster freeze for the Four Nations face-off. I think that'll make things really interesting. Dude, Vancouver, we've talked with Vancouver, or we've talked about the prospect of a trade, maybe not involving Sidney Crosby, but involving, just about anyone else to acquire Elias Pettersson.
And
it looks really like now our old buddy Jim Rutherford has come out and said that he is looking to get rid of both of these guys potentially in just a shocking. I could see one of them getting shipped out, but both of them, they're just to hell with both of you. We need roster ready players right back. I think the only untouchable is Quinn Hughes. I saw even Brock Besser's maybe even a potential candidate to be traded. Robbie, I saw that the fourth period, take whatever you will from them. They said that the Penguins are sniffing around on JT Miller.
That would not surprise me in the least bit, because that's from Pittsburgh, been a name that's been linked with the Penguins for quite a few years now. Would not at all surprise me if they would look into that. Obviously, I would much rather prefer Elias Pettersson, but it definitely seems like things are coming to a head in Vancouver, to the point where Jim Rutherford's just like, whatever, got to trade both of them. Can't deal with either of them.
Well, you just have to be sick to your stomach if you're like a competitive guy like Jem Rutherford and these two players are squabbling. The Canucks they gave Pettersson everything that he needed to get that deal done. And you bring over a guy like JT Miller, they re-signed him to a monster deal.
A monster deal.
They were both playing together when these deals were signed, and you look Jim Rutherford in the eyes and say, we just can't get along. It has to make him sick. That's why I think he's like, screw both of you guys. You're both gone. I'm gonna get whatever I can for both of you.
Yeah, Rutherford's he's a curmudgeon too. He's not really one to put up with the BS that is coming out of that franchise right now. But I mean, if you're a Canucks fan, you got to be sick too. I mean, it looked like a few years ago, it looked like they were on the ascent, like they were going to be a team that competes for Stanley Cups year in and year out, and now they're talking about moving on from two of their core players, really. But yeah, if you're a Canucks fan, you got to be sick. At least you still have Quinn Hughes, is pretty awesome. But yeah, I mean, moving on from Elias Pettersson and JT Miller is a huge reset button for that franchise. And one thing I will say, if they are planning on moving on him, I think you're going to have to pay up unless you're just sick of him and trying to get him out of there.
Well, yeah, Robbie, isn't there a chance that they might not even get like a fair market value for both of them?
There could be.
There's a chance that could happen, right?
Especially with those contracts. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, it's so crazy. I feel like 2 or 3 years ago, I was begging for Connor Garland off that roster. Connor Garland might be an untouchable on that roster, and they're looking to move on from JT Miller and Elias Pettersson. What a world. I would put my hand up for either of them. I would be willing to sell. I would be willing to give them close to fair market value for Elias Pettersson.
I think Pettersson, of the two guys, Pettersson is the guy that you absolutely pay up for. Like, I absolutely would be like, hey, that is. I understand where the Penguins are right now, but that is. I mean, changes the complete complexion of the rebuild. He's under 30. He's under contract. He's a center. It completely changes the complexion of your rebuild in a moment. Even if it doesn't do anything this season, obviously if they get him now, you're probably not bringing him back. But we're talking much more about next season and beyond, because it completely changes the complexion of the Penguins rebuild.
He's only 26.
Yeah, I mean, under contract, and with the way the cap's going up, that contract could very well be a bargain in a year or two. So yeah, I mean, that completely changes if I'm pushing all my chips to the middle of the table, it's for Elias Pettersson more than JT Miller. Miller, I don't know with that contract if there is a way to get fair market value, at least in season.
He's 31.
Yeah, and he's more of a power forward, so you don't know how that body's going to hold up. Pettersson, maybe I mean, people like to rag on him for being a little softer. He is more of a perimeter player, but completely changes the complexion of your rebuild if you're the Penguins, and would absolutely be a guy that you go all in for.
Oh yeah, just think about. I mean, with a guy like him, you look towards the future, and you're like, he might have some good line mates coming up the pipelines in Rutger McGroarty and Tristan Brose, with the perimeter play of a guy like Elias Pettersson and kind of the power forward-esque playing of a guy like Rutger. The creativity of a guy like Tristan Brose, and then you might have Harrison Brunnicke feeding Elias Pettersson one-timers on that off wing. Dude, it might be sweet music out of Pittsburgh if they make that happen. But to be totally fair, I've been hot and cold on JT Miller. I think that he's kind of he seems like a moody guy, but he drags his team into the fight, and Sid has been doing that for far too long. If they could get JT Miller in, power forward type player, he can play center, he can play wing. God, you bump maybe Evgeny Malkin to a wing, and the top six shapes up pretty well, but it brings that element that that I love so much, that piss and vinegar. He's willing to fight. He goes into the dirty areas. He can play power play. He can kill penalties. I would put my hand up for JT Miller at this point, because this team needs someone that maybe hold other players accountable as well as themselves. So It'll be really interesting to see what this whole trade market kind of opens up to be prior to the Four Nations. But you got to think that the Penguins, Dubas has got to be kicking tires on numerous things right now.
I'd say so. Yeah, I'd say so.
I wanted to also bring up, you had an interesting hot take that I thought we should dive into a little bit more. You sent me a great interview with Wilkes-Barre's own Sergei Murashov. Great little interview with that guy. I think that he's he's a character. He's playing really well too. Your hot take was, if I'm not mistaken, that actually next year he's our starting goaltender.
The dude just exudes confidence. Just a massive belief in himself, and that's what you need out of a goaltender. Goaltenders obviously have a reputation, and he seems to live up to it. But everything I see out of this kid, he believes in himself. And he just, again, next year, I think the goaltending obviously is going to look much different. And the way he's playing, I just think that opening night, he is your starting goal. He is the starting goaltender opening night.
Dude, at this point with the goaltending, I don't know how to make heads or tails of goaltending in Pittsburgh right now, because I think I'm going to point fingers all over at Sullivan. I just don't know if a goalie's really set up to succeed. It just seems that since they got rid of Fleury, goaltending has just been a roller coaster for this team.
Yep.
But if I'm not mistaken too, Robbie, and maybe you'll remember this, isn't Sergei Murashov kind of on a talent basis supposed to be the higher prospect out of him and Blomqvist? Talent-wise, he was kind of more highly touted. Blomqvist is steady and good, but talent level wise, like if you gave him a grade, he would be kind of that higher prospect goaltending wise. Like I've heard the name Vasilevsky thrown around when compared. Comparing talent.
I've heard Shesterkin, Vasilevsky. It's kind of in that vein of like grabbing a Russian goaltender in the draft and just seeing what can happen. And that's what they did with Murashov. They got him. I believe he was a 3rd round pick, and like obviously they see the talent and they scout that well, but that we're kind of in that vein of thinking, from what I understand. Maybe we have a Shesterkin, or maybe he just does. Again, it's a 3rd round pick at that point. It's a scratch off ticket. And so far it seems to be hitting, and very well. If he is their version of Shesterkin and Vasilevsky, and again changes the complete complexion of the rebuild, because the Penguins have not had it's until like Matt Murray in 2016, 2017 was the last truly felt like steadying presence in goal for the Penguins. Even 2018 a little bit. He was still good that year, and more after that, that he really started to fall off. But it's been on 7 years, and you felt good about the Penguins goaltending situation. And a lot still has to play out, but with Murashov and Blomqvist, I really like where things stand right now.
Yeah, for sure. They're kind of the hope for Penguins fans. I just feel like every goaltender they've had, that's like, it seems that they start out pretty solid and then weird goals start to go in. Happened with Murray, happened with Jari. Ned, sometimes he's just battles so hard, but every once in a while he lets in a stinker. It's not for a lack of effort, though. I think anyone would argue that Ned's a great guy. I like him in the locker room. I like he's very honest in his interviews. I think he's a great backup goaltender. But dude, since we're on goaltending, I had one gripe about this. Sullivan was stated in an interview saying that coming up, Blomqvist was going to see a lot of games coming up. Ned played like not back to back. He played back to back nights, and he's played the bulk of the games since the whole Jari getting sent down, Blomqvist getting called up. It makes no sense to me. I know Sullivan does this all the time too. They pull a guy up and he talks kind of highly of him, and then he scratches him, backup goalie, cuts down on minutes. I don't know. You never know what you're going to get, no matter what Sullivan says. It just seems that it's. He always says, I put the best roster out there that gives us the best chance to win. And I don't know. At this point, it's like, what do we even believe from these guys anymore? I was thinking Blomqvist should have gotten the bulk of the starts. What about you?
Absolutely. I mean, I thought that was the reason they kind of did all this. The talk was, okay, this is Joel Blomqvist net now.
Well, we
And
said when he got called up that Joel Blomqvist was being called up to be the starting goaltender. He wasn't
yeah,
being called up to be the backup. Like, he's the starter now because of how
that's
the play had been.
that's the impression that I was under, and I think that everyone was under. And they have 5 games now between Wednesday night and the Four Nations. I mean, I think you got to get Blomqvist 4 games in there. That's what I would do. I mean, what it's not hurting. It can't be worse than Jari. I mean, Blomqvist, the games he's played, he hasn't given up a goal in the first like 5 shots. So, um, yeah, I was under the impression it was going to be Blomqvist net. Yeah, so that way I've been extremely disappointed that we've been seeing more Nedeljkovic than Blomqvist, but I hope that does change here in the coming weeks.
Dude, something's got to change in these coming weeks, and I hope that at this point in the season, just give us something to chew on. Give us something. Throw us a bone as fans. Give the team something that'll give them a little jolt of life. Yeah, I don't know. It's been disappointing. This run, we said so many times, this road trip that was looming, that they are now on, that is now ending soon. Lots of points were available. Of all people, they beat the LA Kings, and then they soil themselves against the Ducks, the Kraken, and the San Jose Sharks. Just not good, Robbie. Not good at all.
Yeah, absolutely. But
is there a chance for playoffs in your mind?
I think it's over. At this point, I'd rather them just try to improve through the draft, unless they're going to go out there and make a banger of a trade
and fire the coach, maybe.
And fire the coach, yeah. Unless you're looking for a jolt of the system, theoretically, you're almost going to need to win these next 5 before the.
They need to win.
Break.
They need to win 22. They need to go 22-9 over the rest of the season to be in a playoff, like to get in the playoffs.
I mean, that would be almost NHL best, and they have nowhere near.
That's Boston 2 years ago.
Yeah, they have nowhere near looked that good. So yeah, I don't see it, and yeah, I mean, I think we'll get some decent hockey the rest of the way. Like, I think they'll have their moments, but not nearly enough to, because you're at this point, you not only need to win games, you need teams above you to lose games in hand, and then games in general when they're even. It's just too deep a hole.
And they suck against their own. Even when they play a team in their division, their record against their own division is just awful.
Yeah.
You can't really count on them for anything.
And real after they play Nashville on Saturday, they have 7 straight, 7 straight against the Metro Division with the Four Nations break in between there. So, I mean, if you're gonna do it, you might as well do it then. I mean, but yeah, I don't feel promising about that.
Yeah, I kind of gave my eulogy on Twitter. I think that the only thing maybe that I tried to put in there that was contingent, because I like to be optimistic about this team. There's no point in being, when it's already bad, you don't need to pile on and make it worse for too long. But man, my only contingency is this team is dead unless there's something done about Dubas isn't going anywhere. And I think that Sullivan just can't, he's not going to get this team. He's going to help get this team a high lottery draft pick, but that's not necessarily what you promised Sidney Crosby.
Yeah.
That's not what you promised the team and the fans. You said that you're going to give it a shot. I think that it's in Dubas's best interest, if you're going to actually try to give this team one more shot in the next year or so. It's not, Sullivan's not going to help you win with this roster. It's just the voice has been lost. So I think they're cooked. They're dead in the water, and unless maybe something like that happens, and even then they're probably still cooked. But I think they'll be better for it. You'll get some exciting hockey.
Yeah, that is for certain. I'd like to see some of these young guys maybe get a chance here after the Four Nations. So we'll see how that all plays out. But no, Penguins, they've lost 3 in a row. They have Utah this evening that wrap up their road trip. They've been bad. They with no life. They're not even competitive in some of these games. But yeah, a couple more games for the Four Nations, so we'll get some good hockey there. But I don't really have anything else. If you have anything else before we wrap this up.
No, I've got nothing else. The Penguins play. Do they play? They play Utah and then Nashville. Is Nashville on the road or at home?
At home.
Okay. Well, I guess we'll see how that goes, but
Yeah,
not super hopeful. I'm sure those guys just want to get back home at this point.
I'm sure as well. Absolutely. But yeah, so that'll wrap up this
Yeah.
episode. We were going to plan on doing a review of the Utah game plus another mailbag on Thursday. So if you didn't ask any questions, you can find us on Twitter and ask us questions. So until then, we will talk to you. Have a good time. Enjoy listening. We thank you guys again. We will talk to you guys Thursday when the Penguins or after the Penguins complete their road trip in Utah. So for Snail, I am Robbie. Have a good night, everyone.